This is the story of a mountain and a story of men. It is the story of how men changed the mountain and later came to regret it. In Marin County, Northern California, since time immemorial, coastal Miwok Indians have called this fog-shrouded peak Tamalpais.
My ancestors were from Tamales Bay and the Point Reyes Peninsula. Mount Tamalpais itself means, Tamal is a direction word, it means west or coast, and Pais means hill or mountain, so it means West Coast Hill. And my ancestors were called Tamalco, or the people of the West Coast. Our connection with the mountain is real direct. We named ourselves after the mountain. Mount Tamalpais is a real significant mountain to not just the Coast Miwok people, but also a lot of indigenous people.
This sacred peak stands sentinel over the 7 million souls in the San Francisco Bay Area. Because of its stark beauty and dominance in the region, towering over man's proud edifice, the Golden Gate Bridge, Mount Tamalpais has always been regarded as the guardian of a vast territory, the ocean, bay, and land that is Northern California. Its unique prominence, unobstructed vistas, and easy accessibility to Marin County roads caused it to be chosen as an ideal lookout for a potential nuclear attack during the dark years of the Cold War. Its job was to hold an unblinking eye on an unthinkable danger, night and day, in storm and sunshine.
My first assignment on Mount Tamalpais occurred on the day of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when we thought we were about to go to war. It was the highest alert that we had come to the whole time that I was stationed there. We were at red. We had the missiles armed and ready to be launched. Fortunately, that didn't happen.
Every aircraft approaching the West Coast had to check in with us at 50 miles out. Jet aircrafts were just coming in for civilian use. So 50 miles out gave us plenty of time. If someone failed to check in at the 50-mile mark, we had a big red button we pushed, and they sent the F-104s out from Hamilton Field.
Top Mount Tamalpais near San Francisco, the Air Force allows a glimpse at one of its most closely guarded projects. On this huge scope, the track of every plane in the area is plotted and checked. If any suspicious flights are detected, jet aircraft at Hamilton Air Base are alerted and take off within 15 seconds. Their course is followed and an interception point is plotted. Standing constant guard, this link in the nation's radar network will permit no Pearl Harbor sneak attack.
The idea of soldiers in these barracks protecting California may have been new to the U.S. military in the 1950s, but the idea of protection was not new to the Miwok Indians, sheltered by their cherished mountain for at least 5,000 years.
Mount Tamalpais is the mother of the watershed. My ancestors in West Marin and Tamales Bay would have lived off the waters that would come down off that mountain, and those waters, they fed the medicines and the plants and the animals and sustained us. So our connection is direct with that mountain. Mount Tamalpais has always been our most sacred mountain for the Coast Miwok. You can see it from miles away from all the areas that were our indigenous areas. It stands up there as the sacred place. But it's sacred not just in a spiritual way, but sacred also in its motherness, in that it feeds us. And a lot of Miwoks won't go up to the top of the mountain out of respect.
Perhaps compelled by the same intuition of sacredness, during World War I, members of Marin County's Alpine Club chose the west peak of Mount Tamalpais to construct a memorial honoring their members who had fought overseas in the war to end all wars. In 1942, at the outbreak of World War II, the U.S. Army placed a small, temporary radar facility right next to the Alpine Club's memorial cairn. The die was cast. More changes would be coming, irreparable changes, and coming soon. 5 years after the end of that war, the Cold War had been fully joined. Now, fighting with spies, propaganda, and the accelerating pace of technology and mutually assured destruction.
We must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover.
We witness today in the power of nuclear weapons a new and deadly dimension to the ancient horror of war.
By 1950, the decision was made to build a permanent radar base on the mountaintop. But in the shadow of the atomic bomb, no voices were raised in protest when the Army bulldozed the World War I memorial and innumerable old-growth fir and Sargent cypress trees in this untouched and fragile ecosystem. 500,000 cubic yards of the mountaintop disappeared. The Army altered, blasted, and bulldozed over 100 acres of this Sentinel Mountain. In its place rose 2 mammoth radar domes, along with bunker tracking stations and barracks to house the hundreds of technicians and soldiers necessary to scan the skies 24 hours a day. Mount Tamalpais was permanently disfigured. National security came at a cost. During the Cold War years, thoughts about the mountain's history, symbolism, and beauty were displaced by fears of a nuclear attack by the Russians. Mount Tamalpais was now a platform for war. Throughout those turbulent years, just as military planners ignored the pristine truth of the mountain, so did they ignore the consequences once their weapons of defense inevitably became obsolete. More cynical observers might say that they did foresee the damage they were going to leave behind, because in 1955 there had been a forewarning of the military's abandonment of the Air Force Station. In a footnote to the relationship between military defense and the civilians entrusted to protect the mountain, in April 1955 the Department of Defense quietly revisited their lease agreement with Marin County and unilaterally removed the requirement to leave Mount Tamalpais as they had found it originally, in its pristine beauty. They refused to take responsibility for what would happen if they, in the legalese of the time, demised the premises.
The removal of the lease requirement that the site be restored, that lease amendment in 1955 was probably a small change whose impact probably wasn't foreseen. Who could imagine that 20, 30, 40, 50 years later that we would be talking about restoring the site to nature? The focus at the time was on constructing and managing a facility that was protecting the country against atomic weaponry. So the Water District Board probably went along with this decision because it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. But now here we are, halfway to restoration, and the impacts of that decision are pretty far-reaching.
Today, this is what halfway to restoration looks like.
Signal 32, 26 miles.
But restoration of the mountain was the last thing that they had on their mind during those decades. Now, scores of nuclear-tipped Nike Hercules missiles encircled Mount Tamalpais with a necklace of hellfire.
Then it was our task to bring the bombers down with our weapons. The Hercules missiles were nuclear warheads that had a range of about 100 miles.
time, which moves infinitely slowly for the mountain, was moving at great speed for the military. By the 1970s, the radar station could track everything but the new nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles from Russia, designed to streak towards their targets 25 times faster than a jet bomber. The fate of the now obsolete military base on Tamalpais was inevitable, but the fate of the scarred peak was not.
I was a security police doing law enforcement duties on the Air Force Station from 1976 to 1979. Mostly our duties were just doing exercises and training, and hikers would wander onto the base and, we would have to shoo them away. And a year or so after I left is when they started to close the base down. I still live on the mountain because I enjoyed it so much that if Mount Tamalpais was not there, I might not still be living in Mill Valley. And I go up there quite often now, either hiking or biking. We visit the base once in a while. I take my kids up there and show them around and talk to them about what used to be and what we used to do. Taking a detour with a friend onto the base up there, and they're saying, "Oh, can we be up here? This is, we're going through the fence." They're in awe of the fantastic views. Looking down on Potrero Meadows is especially nice. Over by where the NCO club was, looking out onto San Francisco Bay, and this is where everybody gathered, and you had this huge picture window, and just the bay is right there. And it was like every day just going by and seeing that.
Because of the rusting and intimidating fences around the long-abandoned radar station, today, out of the 3 million annual visitors to Mount Tamalpais, only a fraction of 1% ever get to enjoy these vistas.
It just infuriates me that that's not open. When we were living up there, we knew that we were in a special place.
And in 1980, when the military finally abandoned the station altogether, it seemed as if the future of the West Peak would be clouded, mutilated, and perhaps destined to be forgotten by time. But members of the Tamalpais Conservation Club took it upon themselves to right this grievous wrong.
We felt it was very important that we should help clean up this mess that the Air Force had left, because it was so unsightly and it didn't belong on the mountain and nobody was using it anymore. And so that's why we decided we would get a crew together and tear these buildings down and try and bring it back to what it looked like before.
It was a great feeling just to get to clean up the mountain and get these things, ugly things they were, out of there. But it was a great feeling for me, what we did do up there. You felt that you made the mountain better, and that was what we were trying to do.
That area is an incredibly scenic place that was off limits to the public. And our goal was to remove the buildings and open up the area so the public could also enjoy the top of the mountain. We'd ended up taking 3 buildings down. A group of us, maybe half a dozen to 10 people, would be working on a weekend with crowbars, hammers, sledgehammers, and we would always give a hoop-wah when we end up taking a roof off or completely removing the rafters from a building.
We had to stop because of problems with asbestos in the buildings. But it was a great feeling for me, what we did do up there. It was you felt that you made the mountain better.
No one wanted to stop. It was very sad that we had to, and we felt very bad about it. But there was nothing we could do about it. We were told we had to stop doing that.
The conservationists were disheartened, but mountains abide. And Mount Tamalpais began calling to herself the people that she needed for her healing.
In the fall of 1989, high up on Mount Tamalpais, Thomas Binyaka, Hopi Prophet, and I were guests of the Dalai Lama. We knew that that mountain had been desecrated. We knew that there were toxics up there. So Thomas and I offered sacred tobacco with sage so that the prayers that would be said that day by all of us who were praying with the Dalai Lama might be heard by the Creator.
Energized by the Dalai Lama's visit, those who cared about Tamalpais continued their pursuit of the West Peaks restoration. And in one of those ironic turns of fate, it was not spiritual insight, but the toxic asbestos that compelled the U.S. government to finally return to the mountain in 1995 to clean up the contaminated wreckage. But the $1.2 million allocated was only sufficient to tear down the wooden structures. The poles, fences, asphalt, steel, and concrete remained as a scar on the mountaintop. In many ways, the partial removal of the wood only served to expose the deeper damage.
If you stand in the middle of the Air Force Station now, what you see are ugly remnants. It has a desolate feel, and from a biological standpoint, it's barren. But not like a natural desert with its seasonal secrets and surprises. It's more like a sterile, empty parking lot.
I think it's a good time to clean up that space and put it back in its natural way. This is our most sacred place, so we need to do what we can to clean it up, put it back in a good way, and that comes with prayer, and it comes with also some sweat equity to put it back in a good place, and so that we remember where our sacred places are.
So how's the site going to look in 10 years after we've completed the initial steps of restoration? What's it going to be like to walk through the restored West Peak? Well, certainly we're going to see taller woody vegetation by then. We'll have Douglas fir trees and Sargent cypress and the various shrubs that live up there. We'll have a healthy, functioning ecosystem there.
Two philosophies have collided at the top of this mountain, on the edge of our turbulent continent. The modern view commands, win, conquer, seize the top. The ancient view declares, respect the high places where spirits dwell. Respect the forces beyond our capacity to know. Sanctify these mysterious places of dreams, inspiration, and awe. Respect them because they are holy. Could the disappearance of Tamalpais's highest peak perhaps be a symbol of our modern cultures devouring the ancient way, banishing the very summit back to the spirit world? But for those of us who still resonate with the ancient ways, who still feel the sacred, and for those who believe it must be protected, the mountain still rises to an invisible peak, calling us.
Tamalpais, 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 Coco shoot Malaya, Coco shoot way. Tamalpais, 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 shoot liwa kichulu, shoot liwa mausu. Tamalpais, 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 Coco shoot Malaya, Coco shoot away. Tamalpais, 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 shoot liwa kitchulu, shoot liwa mausu. Tamalpais, 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 Coco shoot Malaya, Coco shoot away. Tamalpais, 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 shoot liwa kitchulu, shoot liwa mausu. Tamalpais, 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 Tamalpais. Hey, hey! Oh.